And joining us now to focus a bit more on this unfolding story as it affects Nigeria is Yomi Badejo-Okusanya, a public relations expert and founder of the CMC Connect Limited. Welcome to the program, sir. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, good afternoon,
So
sir.
let's talk this travel apartheid, as it's being called. We know that we are on the red list, and a lot of African countries are kicking up against it. The discussion of racism versus actual science is really big up in the air. I just want to get your opinions on how we got here and how we can move forward thanks to Omicron.
Okay, let me just say that I'm here in my capacity as the president of the African Public Relations Association. And really, we think that very often there's a demarketing of Africa, and it's a deliberate attempt for Africa to be seen in bad light in terms of war, strife, hunger, poverty, and so on and so forth. So the African Public Relations Association, our goal is to sell positive Africa. So when we see anything that detracts from this mission, we raise we raise a flag, right, and which we have done right now. Because the truth of the matter is that it is illogical. It's there's no science behind it. We do not understand how the Europe and maybe Canada have arrived at this decision. Let's say the Western countries, because we all know that by statistics, Africa is perhaps the safest place to stay in this period, exactly, or even during the pandemic. Our numbers are nowhere near what they're recording in Europe, but yet we are the poster boy when it comes to issues like this. So we are here to let the world know, especially calling on Africa, calling on the leaders in Africa, calling on the African Union, calling on the Western countries, calling on all civil organizations, the WHO, as a matter of fact, to say that this is wrong and the ban should be reversed.
Mr. Kusa, some analysts are asking, why cry foul? After all, because as they say, even in Freetown, there is nothing that is free.
True.
We always run to the Western world, cap in hand, always begging for aids, and always literally showing ourselves that we cannot, as a nation, be independent or try to probably steer our affairs without seeking help, be it military or be it in financial terms, to help solve our problem. And right now, they do not need us. We do need them. And right now, just like great gifts, literally, we are where we are today because of our problems. So why are we surprised that this is happening when we have always peppered to them and we've always been subservient to them over the last probably century ago?
Let me pick an analogy for you. You and I are going into a race. We're going to run down Awolowo Road. And you have been tied. Your legs have been tied. And I'm ahead of you 400, 500 meters. And I expect you to still catch up with me. What am I saying? Let's remember that we lost almost 400 years to slavery. And I'm not giving that as an excuse. Africa definitely does have its problems, and it should be sorted. But we should not be whipped as the poster boy of everything that is negative. There are things happening in Africa, there's poverty in Africa, there are issues concerning Africa, but this is not one of them. Let's talk about science. This period in the world right now, we know winter enhances the spread of COVID. Here, it doesn't happen. Look at it. I mean, literally, Nigeria has gone back to normal. We still have our parties, we still have our gatherings, and the numbers are not even up. And yet, in those countries, with all the restrictions, with all the mask mandates, the numbers are going up daily. And then you then turn to us and make us look as if we were the ones who caused it. Let me ask you a question. Who brought COVID to Nigeria first? Was it a Nigerian?
Nope.
Was it not an Italian? It's not a homegrown thing.
The exact point I'm still
Exactly.
making. The point I'm still making is when we have decided to be, for lack of better word, to be a second-class citizen of this world based on what we do without us trying to be independent or probably self-reliant. I think that's the right word, without being self-reliant. Whatever they say to us, we'd have to take it, whether we like it or not.
I'm sorry, I
Because the
disagree.
United Arab, for example, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, in the heat of what was happening with human rights at Jamal Khashoggi, the US was still doing business with them.
That's
People
right.
criticized them, but the US didn't stop doing business with them. Donald Trump rationalized it by saying that business is business, and we'll leave it at that.
I completely agree with you. And I'm not saying that we don't have our issues. I'm not saying that our leaders do not have to do more. Definitely, there's a deficit of governance. And, I could go on about that. But at the same time, that does not give you the right to lie against me. That does not give you the right to paint the wrong picture against me. What are you relying on? You're relying on statistics. Statistics show that you have 10 times, or the countries around you have 20, 30, 40 times the issues that I have, and then you ban me. That's what I'm talking about. For instance, I don't spare our government. I don't spare our government. I mean, many times I disagree with my Egbo, Alhaji Lai Mohammed. But on this occasion, I agree with him.
Okay.
I completely agree with him. It's wrong. This is not right.
So we've seen this type of insane behavior where the science does not match the actual behavior of the populace. And most recently, we've seen it with vaccines. We know that vaccines put up a heavy fight against the coronavirus. We know taking them is pretty much the only way to battle this. Everyone has known this for at least, I don't know, for a really long time, but still, everywhere there is vaccine hesitancy. There are people who don't want to take vaccine. I mean, they've made it their whole mandate to not take the vaccine, and and the virus is still out there. Same thing with this. Clearly, the numbers are low in Africa. Our healthcare systems are very terrible, but the whole continent hasn't been wiped out. So clearly, COVID is not as prevalent here. So what I'm trying to play here is we've seen this kind of insane behavior where the science doesn't match how people's behavior follows through. What should we do? I mean, we still have issues with trying to convince people to take the vaccine. How long will we be having to convince the rest of the world that this is not an African disease and that we should be allowed passage through their borders?
It goes back to what we're talking about. Now, where does superstition thrive the most? In ignorance. When the literacy level is low, then you find all kinds of things. People begin to worship mountains, begin to worship stones, and so on and so forth. So really, it has to do with superstition, and that can only be improved through enlightenment. And then mix that with a good dose of religiosity, and then we're in real big trouble. Because I've heard people say, "Oh, my pastor said, my imam said," and so on and so forth. And look, like Karl Marx said, religion is the opium of the masses. So we're dealing with those two issues, and it's based on, like I said, ignorance. So the more that we advocate, the more that we enlighten, and there are other issues that we're trying to enlighten across the board, whether it's VVF, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's child abuse, whatever, we're still trying to educate about that. So what is it? By doing this, what they've done, what Europe is doing, is setting Africa back, because even the small gain that we're making is then going to turn around to be. So I think that what the Western world should do, because we agree that they've gone ahead of us in many instances, rather than stigmatize us, they should come let's work at it together. It is a global problem. It's not an African problem.
All right, Mr. Kusa, is this, why you say this, I think I share your perspective, but is it time to now take what some people in the West deem as radical, the approach or the perspective or the thinking of the late Muammar Gaddafi, whereby we begin to look at ourselves, begin to handle our own finances ourselves, create a central bank for Africa, so that when things like this do come up,
yes,
we can actually fight.
I agree. In fact, while we're taking that position at the African Public Relations Association, we also challenge ourselves, because really, why don't we have our own homegrown vaccine? Why do we have to turn to the Western world for the vaccine? Why do we have to take handouts These are the issues that we at the African Public Relations Association, we have with the African Union, we have with government in Africa. We are 54 countries in Africa or thereabouts. Are you telling me that we cannot find people from those countries who can develop a homegrown vaccine?
It's a shame.
It's a shame.
It's a shame.
But we have run out of time.
All right.
Thank you so much for
Thank you very
coming
much.
on the program, Mr. Badejo-Okusanya.
Thank you very
Pleasure.
much.